Good afternoon, welcome to the committee of the Citizens Committee on the Public Hearing Process for the Anchorage Assembly. It's 2:30, it's the 18th of September. And this is the drafting committee, which means that our job is to try to make some sense out of our recommendations that are going forward to first the Rules Committee of the Assembly, which is composed of Dick Traney and Elvie Gray Jackson and Jennifer Johnson. But first I want to say, the first thing we're doing is we're drafting a series of recommendations upon which the public is asked to comment at our public hearing on October 1st. That's our first audience. Then we come back, take what we get from the public hearing, manipulate or rearrange or restructure anything that we've suggested, and that goes forward to the Rules Committee of the Assembly, and then we report directly to the full committee of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly. Also tomorrow at noon, the full committee will be meeting to receive anything that we have to suggest to them about the recommendations that we're making. Last week I had drafted
And that's downstairs.
downstairs tomorrow. Last week, I know I had sent it to you guys.
I have extra copies of your possible topics.
Perfect.
Anyway, if you don't have copies, this was emailed to you on the 11th, and they've got them. And Citizens had, and Carolyn's comments are her comments on this draft. So, does that make any sense to you?
Numbered and labeled, lettered
Right.
accordingly.
Very nice. Easy to follow.
And so, good afternoon. And so where we are in terms of our thinking for today is, I had asked all the committee members to respond in writing to the September 11th version, which you have in your hands. And Carolyn did so, and I didn't hear in writing from any of our other colleagues. However, for both of you, we did talk quite a bit about several topics at the meeting that we had last week about this. And those are included in my email to you, which included we would probably not have dueling lawyers articulating legal opinions about the interpretation of the charter, that we would, I'm sorry, I don't remember all the, you have it in front of you, Carolyn, I don't.
It was, we discussed possibly having someone like Joe Josephson.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we
but
dismissed
instead-
that.
Yeah.
However, I will say, I saw Joe Saturday, and just in a personal conversation, he was rather surprised that anybody would think that all of the citizens don't get to testify.
You wanted to know what we were talking about last week? Is that what you were?
No, I'm actually trying to recall what I wrote in the email to all of you. It said, these are the three things we decided
Oh, okay.
when we met
Apologize.
last week, and I'm just going back
That I
in
did not
time
print out.
to look at that, so that I'm just bringing everybody up to date in an effort to say where we were. And I'm with that, I guess I'm going to suggest that we simply take a look at the draft we have before us, and with the assistance of Carolyn's comments, go through what we want to present to the rest of the
Did
committee.
you find your email?
I did not.
I did.
Great.
So Carolyn.
Thank you.
Quick draw.
It says,
I think that's when you're looking
number
for.
2, that the rules for the public hearings
Yeah.
should be printed on the agenda directly, and that if The rules will actually include an option for a sign-up sheet if there are many people. And we talked quite a bit back and forth about, should there be a sign-up sheet for every hearing or not? And the majority said, no, do not have a sign-up sheet for every public hearing, because 90% of the hearings, there's no one to testify or one or two people. But that the purpose of the sign-up sheet is to help the municipality facilitate a hearing so that all who seek can testify, can do so in an orderly manner. If there is a sign-up list, the municipality must manage it. That's because during the ordinance
64.
on labor, the unions were managing the list because there was nobody to manage it from the municipality side. I don't know if that's accurate. And number two, there was someone who testified at the public hearing saying that when she came to testify on the civil rights ordinance, someone told her she could not testify because she was not 18. And the person who was handling the sign-up list gave that citizen misinformation. So the notion that there is a sign-up sheet, if there ever is a sign-up sheet, that there would actually be managed by the municipality. Mr. Haberman?
I just want to point out that the notice for this meeting was posted on the website today, and there is an appropriate amount of time of notice to let public know that there's a meeting. So by holding the meeting today, as you're doing, you're in violation of the open meetings law.
Thank you.
And by the way, I did contact her privately and link her up with the Equal Rights Commission, so.
Oh, good.
Good.
I had a question about the union too, and the fact that, I mean, they did a great job of organizing the union members, but what happened to the people who weren't union members who wanted
Right,
to testify?
okay, so the resolution of that is that if there is a
Yeah.
sign-up sheet, the municipality must manage it. The people should be able to sign up in person and electronically, so they could sign up on the sign-up sheet, both in person in the assembly hall as well as electronically. If they were not physically there, they could sign up. And that if a member of the public, this is, the question was, who gets to decide when we have a sign-up sheet? And what's the sheer volume of mass that would indicate that the municipality, again, the sign-up sheet is an effort to manage the public, not to in any way discourage. It is really important, and it was discussed at length, that this is not a process of wearing them down or getting rid of them or not allowing them to speak, but actually to facilitate the management of it. That, and the way it is today, it's the call of the chair, is that correct, Amanda, about when they make a determination that we should have a sign-up sheet. And it was Joelle who suggested that there should also be a process whereby the citizens can request a sign-up sheet. So that if, she suggested, if a member of the public requests the use of a sign-up sheet, this management tool should be utilized. This is just for our consideration, but the back and forth between we got 20 people to testify or we got 200 people to testify. Someplace between those two, there's room for perhaps some gentle guidance on their part. Item number 3 was, from our discussion last week, was if there is a sign-up sheet and the public hearing is continued, people may continue to sign up at any day that the hearing occurs as long as the hearing continues.
What are you
So
reading from over there?
I wrote an email to all of you, and this
Mhm.
is my email
Yeah.
to
Do
you.
you want me to go print
Oh.
it? I
Oh,
can
that would be great,
do-
yeah.
Okay,
I wrote this email
Because
after.
I didn't print it and bring it with me, but,
Nor did I. On Friday the 13th, I wrote this email as a result of our conversation on the 12th, excuse me.
This one was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just
Okay,
reading
got it up too.
Item 1, 2, 3,
Ah.
4, 5, on an email that I sent to you on Friday the 13th after we met on the 12th. Hi Cheryl, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Cheryl.
Good to see you.
Uh,
Is that
people-
free?
People
Okay.
in
Yes.
attendance.
Oh, I don't know who's-
I have
It's
a,
my stuff, I'm sorry.
I have a little tape recorder going here, so I'm just saying. Cheryl Richards has just
Good to
joined
see you,
us.
Jim.
Jim Barnett, Pam Goodstein, Carolyn Ramsey, and Bob Churchill are all present, as is Amanda. Okay, I'm reviewing the bidding for our two members who were not at the public, one public was on the public hearing and both were not at the last meeting. I'm just reviewing the email that I sent out following our meeting on Thursday, which articulated, and summarized what we had talked about. So number 3 is if there's a sign-up sheet, and the public hearing is continued, that anybody can sign up anytime. What that means is there's no, you sign up today or you're dead, cutoff. If there's a public hearing going on, you can sign up anytime, is really the point that was articulated by this group. If we're having a public hearing and you show up, you can testify. You don't have to have been there the first night. The 4th point of our conversation last week was to minimize surprises by the public. All ordinance or resolutions for introduction must be listed on the regular agenda and cannot be added to the addendum. Only emergency ordinances may be introduced via the addendum. The
That
addendum.
is my issue. If I can just identify with one issue from this. When I was on the assembly, the addendum was the way you snuck in controversial stuff without people knowing about it.
Exactly.
Okay, and so the idea, the concept, this says, if you're going to hold a public hearing on the item, whether it's an ordinance or a resolution, you cannot introduce it on the addendum,
Perfect.
period.
Because then nobody's aware of it.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, 3 people say, sure, go ahead.
Right. And the last point, thank you, Amanda, I appreciate it. And the last point is, in the case of a large number of people seeking to testify on an ordinance, the chair may request individuals to identify what communities in which they reside as additional information for assembly members. This was the back and forth of the equal rights ordinance, where there were people who lived in Wasilla or other parts of the Matsu Valley who were bussed in to testify. And so there was many.
So the point is, they can testify if they're from Wasilla.
Yep.
Yes.
But the point is, if somebody asks them where they're from,
They must identify where they're from when they introduce
May.
themselves. My name is Jane, no, it's, well, okay.
yeah,
And
you can't.
Carolyn's recommendation was that they be asked to identify the city that they live in or the zip code.
Right.
And
And-
this summary says,
That was Carolyn's recommendation for this, so that the assembly is aware that this
I
person
wish I could try and use my
who
phone.
is
Actually,
testifying
paper.
can
So you
testify.
don't have to read the folder.
I
Thank
thought it
you.
might be bigger.
It's good. Anyway, it's the last point. So the notion was that we went through, do we have to demonstrate that you were a resident? Who is a resident? I live in the valley, but I own property in Anchorage. I pay taxes in Anchorage. Do I lose my voice just because I sleep someplace else? Blah, 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 back and forth and forth. In the end, it was, okay, and then there were discomfort with people requiring to give their address because there are people who didn't want other people to know where they lived. And so the notion was that if you gave your name and the city in which you live or the neighborhood in which you live, so that the assembly has additional information about that when they're listening to someone. We can't cut them off. We won't, I mean, the recommendation of the group to date was that you can't, some people did
Eliminate those
want to
people.
eliminate them.
Yeah, there are a
but-
couple of us who would have liked to eliminate it, but we got.
But we're not
outvoted.
eliminating people here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, thank you. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Jane,
Yes.
you had asked me to provide feedback on the Juneau ordinance that states, if an ordinance is amended as to any matter of major substance, the ordinance shall be treated as a newly introduced ordinance. And so I asked Lori Sika, who is the clerk in Juneau, how is it determined if an amendment is major substance and who makes this determination? She said usually the city attorney, but sometimes it's just obvious and the city manager can determine. She said it's better safe than sorry, I think. So they err on the side of caution.
So they'll republish it if it's,
Okay, so basically, if the determinant is the city attorney or the city manager, the administration gets to decide, in the case, in the articulation from June.
But it seems that they err more on the side of republishing it than.
But that's a manager form of government, and we're different than that.
As I say, we don't have a city manager.
Yeah, we do.
Well,
do?
George Vacalis
It's
is,
different. Oh, just, okay,
but the point is that the mayor and the assembly are separate,
right.
whereas they're merged in the manager form of government.
Mhm.
The mayor is just one of the members of the council,
Okay,
and the manager works for all of them.
okay.
Theoretically, removing the political nature of the role of the mayor in the determination of this, for example.
Really, it would be a cautionary tale rather than a hard rule.
Well, that was helpful, and I appreciate your following up on that.
But even if they republish it, in our rules, somebody couldn't testify on the republished.
Oh, yes, it would be a new
It
ordinance.
would be a new ordinance. Oh, okay.
And
It wouldn't just be S1,
that,
S2.
Correct.
I think it's something that we've kind of talked about in this group of, you know, if there are changes to the ordinance that are substantial, should someone be allowed to testify again? And that might be something we should consider discussing in our recommendations. Because
so.
I think, for example, if you look at AO 37, the original version, versus AO 37 S2 as amended, which is what passed, there could be substantial differences. I mean, there are. It went through an S version, an S1, S2, and then the S2 was amended. So those documents
Within a
are
fairly short time.
potentially significantly different between the two of them, but people were only allowed to testify one time. So
That's really limiting.
So the question of substitutes is actually still before us, and there was an effort to try to talk about that, but maybe we need more time.
And I think that items that I see that this group has been discussing that are really important are the S versions, the addendum, and the laid on the table items. I think that those issues deal with public notice, deal with the way that the citizens can interact with the government, and deal with the way that they have to understand the impact. If something isn't noticed with sufficient time for public to understand it, to review it before they come testify.
So we have S versions and addendums, and there are still things that are laid on the table above and beyond that.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. What does laid on the table mean in that definition?
So it's not the same as it's referred to in Robert's rules. It's sort of, and I haven't heard it in any other jurisdiction, the use that Anchorage does for laid on the table. And I've asked the other clerks if they have laid on the table, and I got blank stares and no response because I don't, crickets. I don't think that it's something that anyone else uses, but the way that the assembly does it is if they have something that they want to have on the agenda that didn't make the agenda deadline, which is 10 days before the meeting. The addendum deadline is 3 days before the meeting, or I guess the Friday before the meeting. Then they will present it at the meeting as a laid on the table item, and the chair will read the title into the record at the meeting. So I think
Separate from the addendum.
separate from the
Even later
addendum.
than the event.
Even later. And some items are, you know, recognition resolutions, which, you know, maybe somebody had just passed away and they wanted to get, and that's maybe something different, but if it
Yeah,
is
that's different from an ordinance, yeah.
substantial, if it's, you know, money, substantial amount of money or anything like that, it just doesn't give, I think, sufficient.
Okay, and I'm
Right.
just out of
Thanks for that.
curiosity, are there any rules about what's allowed to be laid on the table?
Not to my knowledge.
So they-
I would have to get back to you on that. I mean, I don't think so.
Well, it sounds like the.
I mean, I think that it has to be through the chair. I mean, not
Yeah.
that the chair
Uh-huh.
lays it on the table, but because the chair
Sounds like they've even loosened up the addendum process a little bit more in recent years, where it doesn't even have to go on the addendum to be introduced.
So, there's no limitation about appropriations or use of money, or, they can't do a lay on the table for a new ordinance to be introduced.
They
Or-
could,
Uh,
and then it would be
But they'll need 3 people.
introduced.
3 people would have to set up a public hearing, that's it.
The laid on the table items function at the meetings the same as the addendum, wherein they are incorporated into the agenda by a vote of the body.
Okay.
So that would be a 6-5 vote, or a majority vote?
Yeah, and typically.
Not even 3?
Yeah, and so that's,
More than 3.
So it
all
does
of
require,
the-
laid on
all-
the, excuse me, I'm sorry, I forgot to listen. Did
That's
you
okay.
say that laid on the table required 6 votes?
laid on the table, as in the addendum, require a majority to be incorporated into the agenda. So they are incorporated into the consent agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and items that are being.
And then unless polled,
They just
they're adopted.
automatically set for public hearing. If they are polled at that point, they need the 3 members for introduction.
We need to look into that and nail that one down.
but as I recall, there are some financial issues that pass on the consent agenda. And
did
so
you get
those
bids?
financial issues would get laid on the table, nobody really examined them, not even the assembly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on what time.
Man,
So,
okay.
and I sent the email about the consent agenda and the items that go for public hearing. So
Right.
there is set rules as to what are public hearing items and what just go on to consent.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, you do provide an opportunity for us to look, actually, can you, my question is for, I don't know, the assembly lawyer?
Julia Tucker.
I don't know if it's her or the municipal lawyer, but I assume it's the assembly lawyer, I'm guessing, to give us some words about what laid on the table is and where it rests in law in terms of that procedure. And I could, but I'm babbling because she works for the assembly. However, I would think that her job is to give legal guidance to the assembly, and I just seek legal guidance from her about the interpretation of what constitutes the rules for laid on the table, or if she perceives any, I don't know if she can even say. Does she think there's any troubles with this? I mean, she may not be able to express that opinion, but I would like to know what the
Well,
the legal structure of laid on the
We can
table
figure
is.
that out.
I can pose those questions and see if I get a
I'll be
response.
interested.
And you might also get her to clarify the rules for addendums, those things that occur on the Friday before the meeting that miss the regular agenda making with respect to public notice. On both of them.
And we're gonna ask her to do that before tomorrow at noon?
I think that may be unrealistic, and that we have some time to
But we-
evaluate that.
But we, this group, have the right to make a policy call beyond what the lawyer says is the minimum legal requirement.
Sure.
I just want to know what the legal structure of those 2 vehicles is from her perspective.
Where's the base of this coming from? Where's the base, where's the foundation of this coming from?
Convenience to get my business done.
Well, I
Thank
No,
you.
no,
understand
no,
that,
whether or
but-
not there's any mention of
But
it in
I would like to
rules or
legally
regs.
know where the foundation's coming from.
Okay. All right, all of that gets to the starting point for today's conversation, which is our goal for today is to prepare a document for the full task force to look at tomorrow. And the September 11th draft is the working document that we're working with, which they have had since September 11th. So,
And have you implemented into that document the stuff that you just read from the iPhone, the things that happened on the 15th?
no. No, and what we have now is recommendations from Carolyn regarding this, and we have recommendations for the group as a whole regarding the 5 items that they discussed when they met last week. And Carolyn, maybe I'll ask you, since you had the wherewithal to at least write down your thoughts, to share them with us in terms of your thought process.
Okay, on 2E, it says items that are laid on the table must be identified and copies made available in the back of the assembly chamber and online. I'm not sure if that was the same laid on the table as we just talked about, and I don't think it is. At least that's not how I took it. But
I was actually, I wrote it, and I thought I was doing addendum.
And they're different things now,
I
apparently.
understand, I'm
Yeah.
a little slow in the pickup.
anyway, just copies available for the public on the table out back. But when you walk in, you don't necessarily look for a table, and if it's there,
Right.
it's kind of hidden, or who knows. But just, is it possible to possibly have some signage hanging from the ceiling, mounted on the wall with an arrow that says information here? You know, just something that says,
New hot stuff.
yeah, exactly, new hot stuff. I like new hot stuff, you know, hot off the presses. Yeah, just something to say, hey, this is where you go to get it, because the average person doesn't know where to go to get it, because you're lucky to trying to get in, find the assembly chambers and get your buttons
The
in
average
there.
person doesn't even know the materials that are on the back wall, or
No,
that the
right.
agenda is there.
There's no note.
That's
Right,
my
correct,
opinion.
yeah.
And so that's what, just signage that says, you know, look here. So that was my thought on that one. 2F was social media, which would be nice to have an assembly, you know, a Facebook account that says, hey, this is what's happening, you know, notes out to anybody and everybody who wants to sign up and be on it, kind of like you have a community council account like Forever Heights or for everywhere else. Basically, the same idea, just operated for the assembly and the things that are happening. There could even be one for planning and zoning. I mean, everybody could have their own thing, so people could actually be more in touch, at least via social media. Twitter is possible from my understanding. You can preset tweets that say, hey, this is starting, and all you have to do is hit send. I have never used Twitter in my life.
We have a
Um,
Twitter account for the clerk's office.
Okay, I did I did
Really? What
We-
happens with it?
We've been working on social media in our office. It's
Okay.
a money thing. It's, you know, staff time,
Yeah.
and it does. But, you know, we are trying to put out more of when meetings are and when the agenda is posted. But it's a slow rollout because it just requires staff time and energy. And
Right.
we are working on it though.
I did sign up for a
Wow.
Twitter account, but I still haven't figured out what to do with it. But I did go through the sign up process.
Excellent.
So, you know, I figured if I'm going to write this, I better at least know a little something.
I love it. I'm in the same
I don't even
boat
have
so long.
Facebook, sorry.
I don't do Facebook, I can do text, I don't do Twitter.
So, and then on to the public
Maybe
hearing.
we're missing a demographic in this committee.
Yeah, I think so.
This one, right over here, she's that demographic.
Yeah. Let's see, we did the zip code name. I just said, you know, whoever wants to testify, you know, at least by your city, maybe by your zip code. For Title 21. it was-
Neighborhood.
Neighborhood. For Title 21, it was important to know what neighborhood you're testifying for if you want to provide valid testimony. If you're testifying as something, fluoride, sorry, but it was just up, you know, the Anchorage Bowl, I think, is fine, but, you know, just something that says you're an Anchorage resident, and however we want to do it, but I didn't think address was really probably a good idea, or you'd get a lot of pushback from address.
Okay.
The public testimony on 3B, where's my 3B? It just said time limits for individuals should be at least 3 minutes, time limit for community council should be 5. I just rewrote it, and feel free to say, no, you're crazy. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes, except for community councils, which could be 5 minutes.
Can I?
And, yes,
I apologize for interrupting.
that's fine, please.
I don't know if we want to clarify if it's the president of the community council, someone speaking on behalf. It
Yeah.
could turn into somebody wanting to get an extra 2 minutes and saying, "Oh, my name's Amanda and I'm with Airport Heights Community Council."
Right.
You know, so I think that.
I've watched that for years and years, and most councils have had that problem, and they have rules that declare that you
Who
need
can
to, yes, who can speak, and that you need to, even they often, I haven't heard it lately, declare the vote. Was it a 6-5 or a 12-2 or a 25-1?
And I want to
I
mention.
just wanted to share that,
No, yeah,
it's
I
typical. I
appreciate
haven't
that.
heard it be a problem in the last years that I've attended assembly
I
meetings.
agree, I just didn't know how to say that.
When I wrote this should be, could be, is actually because we hadn't decided. We
Yeah.
had many different topics, many different perspectives on the time limitation. The question for the group, particularly Bob, kept thinking that people had so much wisdom to provide that we should give them a more time to be able to articulate. So this was intentionally vague, with the intention that we would tighten it up.
Okay.
And so the question, I know it's 3 minutes today across the board for everybody, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Whether you're an
Mhm.
organization or not. And what happens is that the chair or others ask questions that extends the time. So some people feel like they get way more time than others.
And they do.
And so,
We can see it.
well, tell me more about your point of view, Mr. Barnett, and you're off and running.
Did you have
and-
something more to say about?
And,
Yeah,
and so,
but
and it happens often, so that the question was, is the time limit just for peons and other people get more time because the people in the assembly know them? And I, as a person who served and did that, I certainly think there's that tendency. So
Right.
today, it's 3 minutes, period. There's no organizations get more time, it's 3 minutes.
Well, correct, that's the rule,
To-
and then we.
Isn't
take
that
our
the way it
privilege.
is today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
That's in code.
Mhm.
Well, that's part of
It's
the
in
code.
code.
we can
Oh.
change the code, we're not limited by the code.
Right.
We can make recommendations to change the code.
harder.
I'm just saying that, so what I'm now saying to you, drafting committee, is what do you want it to read going forward?
And that was my opinion.
Carolyn said 3 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes for community councils.
And I would agree with what Amanda said, that it should be a member of the.
A representative
Qualified.
of.
Designated
yeah,
representative.
Designated
Thank you.
representative.
Be it the president, the vice
Designated
president, the secretary.
representative to speak for
but-
the-
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Well,
agree with
the-
that.
The language can be very simple. See, I have a lot of experience hearing testimony, and if I'm not hearing it, I will ask, are you speaking on behalf and with the authorization of your community council? And it's rare, but every once in a while, you can tell the minute it's asked, they turn a little bit red and they start to say, I love my mom and apple pie, and you know they're not.
Right.
But the vast bulk of it, yes, in fact, there's been a vote, they've been asked to speak, whether they be the president or vice president, on behalf of that council. And I think that's easy to determine.
And also, we're a small community, and we
Yeah.
know our councils, and we know our reps.
And
Yeah.
Penny?
Some of the public hearing folks said 3 minutes was fine for individuals.
Many,
So,
many, many
Many
people.
did,
Yeah.
so I think it ought to stay 3 minutes for individuals.
When it started running over 3 minutes, really, I mean,
Yeah.
the people that came up, that really came up and had something to say, got it done, they got it done within the 3 minutes. The ones who wanted to discuss for an extended period of time the fluoride or other things, it lasted longer than 3 minutes,
But it-
really.
See-
Just get up and get it done.
Here's where I came from with the idea, because I've taken a lot of testimony
Right.
on a lot of boards. It is what I see happening so often is we're really doing a straw poll. People get up and say, I don't like X, or I like X. And what I'd like to see, something in the process would encourage some thoughtful testimony from usually a representative of an organization. That's when it's happened most commonly. They come in and they say, hey, here's X, and I represent 60 or 100 or 1,600 people, and here's our thinking on this. And you get much, I think, broader and deeper information in that line, and I think it helps guide decisions much more than we had 700 people testify and 350 liked it and 350 didn't, and where are we at?
In my opinion, to guide the testimony, which I understand what you're saying, if we can get a public testimony written public testimony submitted in writing, up and running, to where anybody can log in or read it, or however we're gonna do it, in fairly real time, or within 24 hours, or within something, then everybody would have access to that information.
I don't disagree with that.
But-
All I'm saying is this is where I'm coming from.
Right.
And I think that either written or electronic written does a lot to address that issue. So
Yeah.
that doesn't give me a lot of heartburn.
But I don't think even an organization, unless maybe community council, should get more than 3 minutes.
See, and I disagree.
I do
I
not.
agree with that.
I do not, because you can get some harebrained group that calls themselves an organization, and
Well,
I just
right.
assume, I think the community council should get 5 minutes. We give anybody 5 minutes, and any other organization can testify, but 3 minutes like me. Or
I-
you.
And based on.
I know you do, I know you disagree.
Hours and hours and hours and hours of testimony, that so rarely happens, in fact. I mean, I know it's out there, and we say, you know, I'm representing in this bizarre organization
That's right.
that in
Who
fact
falls
is
in
not an
America.
organization.
But you have people like Tim, and I told this to Tim when we were sitting there that day. You have people like Tim Potter who can get up and talk for 15 minutes and put on a beautiful presentation.
Try half an hour.
But, well, I was just being nice.
There's the voice of experience.
He can put up a beautiful presentation for an extended period of time, but yet it's my home that he's trying to destroy by his project, and I only get 3 minutes. I'm gonna call
That's
BS
right.
on that.
That's right.
And that's exactly why I have an
understand.
issue with it. So if he wants to have a 30-minute presentation, he can put it in writing.
And 3
Okay,
minutes to talk, just like
So
you.
what I hear is, within this committee, there's a difference of opinion on the 3 minute, and so tomorrow, I'm gonna ask the committee to vote on this question. And so I just wanna tell you that that's how we're gonna
This-
resolve this.
And what will the options be on the vote, please, Madam Chair?
3 minute,
3 minutes or not 3 minutes?
No, well, 3 minutes for who, though? I mean, that's the
Okay.
question, right?
well,
3 minutes for people, 3 minutes for
I'm
organizations?
gonna give Carolyn some kudos for having written it. And then I'm gonna say Carolyn's language, which is that citizens, individuals are limited to 3 minutes, and community council, designated representatives from the community council are limited to 5 minutes. That will be what you can
I
vote
think
on
that's
tomorrow.
great language.
Oh, okay.
You're okay, you'll.
So he's okay with it now. If he's okay with it,
No, I said it's great
okay, it's
language.
great language.
Huge difference, my friend. I think
Amanda.
it's well written.
I just want to clarify, are we voting 3 minutes for everyone, one option, and then the other option, 3 minutes for everyone with 5 minutes for community?
There you
Okay.
go. Those are two options.
Is that the two options
Yeah.
that we're choosing?
What
There's
are-
actually
Are
3
there
options.
Are there others?
Yeah, there's another
Yes,
one.
Yeah,
there's another one
his.
that Bob is recommending.
His.
as
Which is?
Third
If
option.
you're any kind of harebrained organization, you get 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or more.
Or more.
Am I bleeding a lot, or is it just a little bit? It's just,
Oh, you can't.
shame on you. No.
That doesn't show through your clothes. Okay, well, let's move on.
Okay, the question
need
though
to
is what
answer the
would
question.
we be voting on tomorrow? And tomorrow, what we're gonna vote on is Carolyn's language, which is a limit of 3 minutes for an individual, and a designated representative of a community council gets 5 minutes. And if people don't like it, they can divide the question and change it.
Cause, and I'm just gonna split hairs, cause this language is, which could be, so it's not even sort of set at 5 minutes, it's sort of,
Not this language, Carolyn's language, which is limited to, and
yeah.
and it will be the,
But her language is,
I-
which could be.
I know, but it's not.
Are we-
I'm-
Okay, you're,
Are we starting with the baseline of?
Who
what
are
you wrote?
allowed?
Yes,
Okay, so that's been
Which are
essentially
allowed, that are
introduced
allowed.
as our starting point.
yes,
And so these are the two suggested amendments to this.
yes.
Perfect.
Scratch out the 3 minutes.
Because I thought this was very well done, and I didn't want to suggest we were going to rewrite it.
No, I
Okay.
mean, we will
We're
amend it to reflect the variations of the themes that have come up. But
And then
there,
it will be presented to the general public for the
Yes.
second public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and Amanda, I made a command decision in my writing since I wrote it, that designated representatives of community councils get 5 minutes
I
instead
agree.
of
are
I agree.
allowed.
Are
Are
allowed.
allowed.
is limited to, should reflect the same.
Is limited to.
Okay, there
5
you go.
minutes.
So now you agree to it? So we don't have a
No,
debate?
no, I agree to the language.
Oh,
I
so
think it's good
You
language.
still like the harebrained, eh?
Okay, so we'll read.
My
I can't wait for that
with
motion.
tears tonight. You
This is gonna be a good
are
motion.
carrying the.
Time,
should be
okay, it's
plotting-
gonna read, tomorrow we will vote on
Plotting
this,
revenge.
on this language. Time limits for individuals is limited to 3 minutes.
Except for designated,
Designated representatives to speak for community councils are limited to 5 minutes.
that works, that works.
Okay,
And then you'll add the harebrained organizations 5 minutes.
okay.
I will work on it, and I may fully support this.
All right, so now we're on
3C.
Carolyn's
3C.
recommendation
And you look like such a
3C.
nice person. All this trouble. Don't lie.
I
use
think
dynamite.
over here.
Tell me when we
Um,
can talk, really.
On on 3C, I was bringing up, if we have sign-up lists, and let's say we have the public testimony extending over weeks or however long it goes, if people aren't available when their name is called, it doesn't preclude them from testifying at a later time. It's not, if you're not there, you
Right.
don't get to testify,
Right.
deal with
Yes.
it. And so I had a problem with that, and then I went back to the, and I put in parentheses, I still really kind of like the group idea, because when you have big amounts of people, personally, instead of going through a roll call, saying you're calling names, I really like, okay, we're gonna hear from group number 10, we're gonna hear from group number 15, and it's a group of 10 people, and they can get up and organize themselves and come up in testimony, and to me, it's just not quite so, Cheryl, you are testifying now, whether you're ready or not.
And she was
So-
saying that this was all modeled on you get your number from the DMV and they call your number instead of
Yeah.
your name.
Yeah, and when AFL-CIO did it for the 37, they did it in batch numbers, or basically group numbers. When I went in and said I would like.
So they managed it, not the municipality.
Right.
They
The
did,
way.
and it was actually phenomenal. I went in, I said, I would like to testify. They had a booth set up out front, and they gave me a sticker with a number on it and said, here's your group number. And
Good.
when I
Good.
walked in, there was paper taped here, and somewhere else that said, group number 20 is testifying now. And then when that group had testified, then group number 21 is testifying now. And I was like, you know what, this is actually really kind of cool. I like how that worked, and and people got up, they went, oh, it changed, they looked, okay, and they went up and they got informed in a line of a group of 10, everybody else got to sit down, there was no questions, and you could tell, okay, if I'm in group number 28 and they're on group number 20, 10 people per group, yeah, am I gonna testify tonight? Probably not. So it really gave you a really pretty good sense of where things were going and how they were going.
But we're saying the municipality should be managing that list.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
secondly, that if you happen to miss your time in the queue,
Mm-hmm.
you still can come back later and
Correct.
speak.
Correct, but I threw out the group number just because it seemed like, even for the municipality, it would be easier, instead of the chair or Amanda or Barbara having to call out the name of the next person, that they could just say, we're hearing from group number 10 now. And even on their little reader board, it could have up in the corner group 10, so you know who is testifying, and that's visible. Now, you can completely blow this idea out of the water, and I'm not gonna be offended and say, no, we're not gonna do it. It was just, to me, it seemed very efficient, not pressing on anybody. Nobody has to come up ahead of time and give their name to have their name called in public, which I heard from multiple people on a personal level said, I'm not warm and fuzzy with that. So it kind of eliminates all that. When you get up to testify, you still have to present your name, spelling of your last name, and where you live. But you're not being called like you're in school or anything like that. And it's not being thrown out there. It's still, by your choice, it's still a bit more autonomous, at least in the beginning.
Was this a process that the labor union set up
Yes.
with the chairman of the assembly?
No, they set it up on their own.
No.
Because they did it to control the crowds, because when you're
The assembly
winding,
walked away from it.
yeah, when you wind up having all these people lining up, the fire marshal's coming in going, yeah, this is not okay, you're blocking doors. So how did they do it? And this was their method they came up with, and I personally thought from my level, sitting out there watching it, that it was pretty functional.
And I
like the assembly
wasn't there
dropped the
either,
ball
but I do
Not
believe
what?
that, I'm told that by Joelle, we were all told by Joelle that the unions had asked the assembly to consider holding the meeting in a larger space because they knew there were going to be a lot of people, and they said no. they'd asked the chairman for a sign-up sheet, and he said no. And their interpretation, that was that he wanted KSI. That's all interpretation.
That's what it felt
He didn't
like.
say that. And that they asked for a methodology for order, and the assembly did not provide.
Wow. Wow.
And,
that's
and so,
outrageous.
and so again, the notion is,
Well, I mean, should we be saying as part
Right.
of their obligation under the Bill of Rights, that they need to manage public hearings for the maximum opportunity of people to testify, consistent with safe practices or something like that? I mean, clearly they gotta keep the room managed, so it's not a fire trap. But by the same token, the Assembly has an affirmative obligation to implement this Bill of Rights, which means they should have been the ones organizing the sign-up sheets and all that rather than us.
well,
I mean,
that's
what
what.
if somebody supported the mayor's position? How in the world were they gonna get there? How did,
That was my
did-
question.
They
Did
could've come
anybody
in.
speak in favor of the
That would've
mayor's
been tough.
position?
There-
And
there
did they
were-
get a word in edgewise, or were they hopelessly intimidated by
Well, there
it?
was only one or two people, I think, that
They
spoke
were
the entire
intimidated.
time
In
of it,
favor.
in favor of it. Anybody else, I believe, that testified in favor of it did writing, or so I heard. I don't know, I never got to read those. And I never had
But
a
how did
desire,
they,
honestly,
how
to
and
read
when
them.
did they testify?
Were they
I
available,
think
were
there
they
was one
available to
person.
read?
Daryl Lanzon testified in favor of it. He talks about it when it comes to these.
Yeah, the
cases.
fluoride guy.
Yeah.
But how did he
But-
get in to testify if he didn't go through this process?
Well-
You can queue, even though they were doing that, anyone can
Yeah.
get in queue to testify.
You mean stand in line behind the
Yeah.
mic?
Yeah, you can queue it if you haven't been given a group number.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to abide by the group number. The group number just helps to kind of control the mass. And it's a little bit easier than these guys having to call names. And you're having your name called. I don't know, to me it just is.
It was very
nicer.
cool.
Yeah.
It's a good suggestion we can make, but I don't think it should be part of the body. But if we have some paper, we can give them some best practices that are kind of aside from what we're thinking they really have to do. I think it'd be a great idea to suggest it to them. But they
Yeah.
do have to manage it somehow.
Right.
They have to
But
manage it
and
somehow.
we just want to make sure that people aren't turned away and they say, well, nobody else signed up on the sign-up sheet or whatever else. The idea is just
Yeah.
to make sure that people are not
Right.
turned away.
And I just wanted to reiterate that I'm sorry you have so many pieces of paper, but that 3C, as it's written here, where it says there will be a sign-up sheet for every public hearing, has been replaced by,
Yeah.
the rules for the public hearing should be printed on the agenda. The rules will include an option for a sign-up sheet if there are many people. The purpose of the sign-up sheet is to help the municipality facilitate the hearing so all who seek can testify in order to do so in an orderly manner. If there is a sign-up sheet, the municipality must manage it. People should be able to sign up in person and electronically. If a member of the public requests the use of the sign-up sheet, this management tool shall be utilized. That's the
Yes.
that's the one piece that
Right.
is different than the others, and that's Joelle saying the assembly refused to do a sign-up sheet, and she seeks a methodology whereby citizens can request it, which might have to be a separate sentence all by itself.
Right.
And it's a binding request, right? I mean, they can request it. If they request it, the assembly has to do
Well,
it.
there we go. That's an important
She
point.
actually did
You can
say,
use the word
if the
shall.
citizen requests, they
Yeah,
shall.
be, yeah.
Yeah.
This management tool shall be utilized. It
Yeah.
says, if the citizen asks, it shall be. And it's not like seeking some generous something or other. It's, I seek this, that your management tool be applied to this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's yeah.
Okay,
So,
so,
give me to go on, or we?
yes, I see
Okay.
once you go. I know we're only on item
3C.
3.
So let's go to 5A. And I didn't have anything on 4 to say. 5A, the assembly may continue a public hearing to a date specific meeting. I just changed that. I said may gives them a little bit too much latitude. I think must is a better word, or maybe shall. I like shall, that's.
Actually,
but-
my point was,
Okay.
the assembly makes a decision that
Yeah.
they are not going to finish it tonight. My point is not they can, may or shall.
May not.
it's that they articulate a date specific.
Okay.
Is the important part is,
I apologize, I missed
no,
that.
no, I didn't write it clearly.
Okay.
Maybe it says, when the assembly continues the public
There you
hearing,
go.
it must articulate
Yeah.
at the date specific.
Okay.
That's what I intended to say, I didn't write it clearly. But when the assembly decides, and they do have the authority to say, no, we can finish it tonight, we've got 2 more people, we've got time, or game over, we're gonna continue it.
Right.
And then they don't always say
That's correct.
to when.
Correct.
So the real variable for the public's notice is to a date specific.
Yes. Okay, so that was 5B. Let's see, public testimony is extended past, it is something I thought that we should look at. Extended past in a certain number of assembly meetings, a continuation, oh boy, that's bad writing. A continuation meeting will be held each Saturday for 8 hours with a half-hour scheduled for a lunch break until all public testimony has been heard. And that might be way off the deep end, but I was making a point, damn it.
Well,
I think that's up to the assembly. Of course, that's a good point.
Well, what I was looking at was we don't have time to take all this testimony for 30 seconds, so we're just gonna cut it off. And then we have all the time in the world till we can get the next mayor in to extend 64, so we can take testimony for 2.5 to 3 months.
That's right, yeah.
And so, and with this current administration, we saw both happen.
so we
So,
actually
I,
see,
64 being gay rights?
yes.
Yeah.
So because after seeing both of those things happen, that this is being utilized for
political.
thank you, for political purposes, wasn't sure if I should say that or not, but thank you, but for political purposes, then,
Yeah.
you know what, damn it, meet on Saturday and make the thing work.
I think we need, the
Well,
more I hear
21
this,
was
the
like-
more I think you
yeah.
need to say in your paper, with number 1, where you say charter requirements, you need to state what the Bill of Rights says, and then the second sentence is that the assembly has a good faith obligation to manage public hearings for, to
Proceeding
conduct
as-
the people's
as-
business
as
and maximize public
expeditiously as
participation.
possible.
Right.
But
Yeah,
but
that's
to
what we're
conduct the
saying.
people's business and to maximize public participation.
Okay,
I
Like
mean,
yes. yes.
clearly what you're saying is they were manipulating the public hearing process to accomplish political objectives in both cases.
And they also did it
which
with
are
Title
outrageous.
21 too, they shut everybody down on Title 21.
They tried.
Well, they did, sort
Well,
of.
then, yeah,
So
that
they
was
could get
different.
everything voted while they had Cheryl on the assembly before
Yes.
the election
Yes.
to push Title 21 through. So these really big major things that we're seeing are happening under this current administration. So that's why I made that comment, and it might have been really far out in left field, but that was my reason for it.
Carol, what I read, and one of the things I'd like to
Time
see
and manner.
is this testimony should be gathered as expeditiously as possible.
Mhm.
Instead of, well, we're gonna meet, a month from now and 2 months, but as expeditiously as possible puts that time requirement without saying it's gotta be Saturday, or it's gotta be Thursday.
Well,
or-
expeditiously as possible is open to a lot of interpretation depending on
There's
who's
some pretty
expeditiously.
tight parameters around that, as expeditiously as possible.
Really?
It's legal? It's a legal term?
No.
I've used it in
Yeah.
labor contracts and it's a burden. Now,
Yeah, wow.
practical, that can be all over the place, but
So-
possible.
Expeditious has.
So anyway,
some-
that was sort of my point, and we can look at that or not look at it, but I was making a point and I apparently made it. So anyway,
And you'll notice that in the current version of 5B, the last sentence says the charter requires a minimum of 2 meetings per month, but more are allowed.
and
There
that
you
was where
go.
that kind of came from too.
And many people testified at a
Yes.
public hearing that said, well, this is ridiculous. They can meet more than they
Sure.
should, rather
Well,
than
we
cutting
can.
this off.
Well, and you made that
I
point.
mean, Jane met
thought
until
that was a
3
great
a.m.
point.
I met every Tuesday.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
I
I
don't
think it
either.
should happen. So
Yeah.
anyway, there's that.
Yeah, I like that.
So 6B, for citizens to secure a printed copy, it was talking about there being a printer attached, so public comments could be printed. When you start getting into the big things like 21 and 37 and stuff, that could be a ream of paper. And so, I thought that was kind of, is there another option, or does anybody have any other ideas so we don't, take down a forest?
I really appreciate your comment about that, and you are probably 100% right, that we don't want to be doing that. Although, I remember coming to the assembly to ask the clerk for an S version, because it wasn't anywhere.
Right.
It was only at the, maybe, what do you think?
So I have taken a lot of suggestions that we've had already in this committee, and I am already starting to implement them in the clerk's office. I don't mind that I'm sort of jumping the gun, but a lot of these conversations, Barbara has only been in our office since July 2012. I was the license and minutes clerk as of last year. I became deputy clerk in August. We are a really new office as far as what we are moving forward. A lot of things have been happening, and we just haven't been able to comb through every single process and say, why are we doing this? We should do it differently. And this task force has brought up a lot of those points. So some major changes that we have made already is we have started to put the agenda up at the
Great.
documents, along with the documents that are on the addendum.
Physically,
those,
you mean?
Mhm, those are available. There is a sign that is now up on the wall of the documents that says something to the effect of, if you need a document, please go see the minutes clerk. We realize that not everyone knows who the minutes clerk is, so we are getting a sign made, like the ones that are our last names, that will say minutes clerk, that will be in front of whoever's functioning as a minutes clerk. There's a handmade sign right now, but we are ordering that. So a lot of these things we are working on. We are working on the S versions, and that's something that a lot of times the S versions is not coming out of an assembly document. It's
Right on the table.
well, and it's from it's from another
From like the
entity.
mayor or something?
Yeah, and so sometimes it's harder for us to get access to those documents till the day of the meeting. So we are working on making sure that those are available to the public. So I think that we should still have these in our suggestions to the body, but know that our office is making changes where we know how. And Barbara and I had this conversation, and Barbara goes, "Well, I didn't know that those weren't there," because she's
New to the job.
and she's up on the dais running the meeting. It's just not something,
And I will also say that it depends on the clerk. And sometimes we have procedures A, B, and C, and then say, let's get rid of C, because it's an administrative procedure. So if it's in writing.
Yeah, no, and that's
Policy will a little bit stronger.
that's something that in general our office is looking at. So if we transition out of these positions, how can we leave behind what we've set up for the people that come after us? Because having had a near turnover out of the 7 people that were in our office last year, there's only 2 of us that are still there. We had an
Wow.
almost 100%
Do you know who
turnover.
Jane Ferguson is?
I've just seen her name on documents. I've never met her
She's still
personally.
around. My wife quilts with her all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Fire
okay,
alarm?
Yeah.
have her over for an hour.
Well, that is very helpful. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
Yeah, that's
moving on
good.
to the last one, 7B.
Before you go to the last one, I'm just sort of thinking of a lot of business things I do, and any more, whether it's sales receipts or contracts, I get asked, do you want that electronically?
Mhm.
And it goes to my business account, and I just love it. And I'm wondering, and I'm just sort of brainstorming, if instead of, when people want a printed copy, oftentimes it's so much easier if it's emailed and they don't have to carry it, they don't have to worry about it getting wet. And I know the bulk of my business stuff anymore is all electronic.
We can amend the sign and let people know they can ask the minutes clerk to have it emailed too. That's really easy.
Yeah.
I mean, but all this stuff is on,
That's the.
it is already on the
Yeah.
web.
Calling.
So we'll try and have other information referring people to the electronic agenda, which has all the documents
Well, and
attached.
that could be from the kiosk. It could be an
Yeah,
option
yeah.
instead of a print button. You could have emailed me this document.
Yeah,
Say,
And then you
"Here's
put
my
it in."
email." Yeah,
Absolutely.
here's
I
your
love
email
that
address.
idea.
You guys
Yeah.
don't have to do
And,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
one less
Good.
thing you guys need to do, but
I
that,
love that.
that would work.
As
That's a
long
doable
as
thing.
there are
Particularly
printed
for large
copies
crazy groups.
available at the meeting,
Particularly for
even
large
if it's a
crazy
book.
groups.
And
No,
so
I'm just
this-
teasing.
I've dealt with books, you have too.
Someone
we
just to
all
look
have,
at it,
And
yeah.
sometimes you need a book.
Yeah,
You need to go to page 57, and that's
Yeah.
just all there is to it.
yeah, absolutely true.
But you don't have to have 25 copies of the thing, just one.
Well,
copy.
sometimes I need 25
Yeah.
copies available at the meeting for the people who need books. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm
But-
sorry, you were at 7?
No, so to move to 7, there was a gentleman that came up, said that he would really like to have a ability to plug in his display and put up a PowerPoint presentation. And I thought about it and I'm thinking, okay, that's really uncensored and that's a really big screen and it's live on TV. Probably not the best and the safest idea. So,
Oh,
anyway,
Carolyn.
needless to say,
Well, then there are bugs. You don't want the bugs to get into your
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, and you don't need to open the system up to viruses or to anything else. So all the way around, I just deemed that to be
Good
probably
idea.
not the
Wow.
best
Good
idea in the
idea.
world.
I like that.
So that's just.
Good idea.
But we do have a big screen.
And if people
yeah.
want to convey information to the assembly,
PowerPoint.
they
They
can
can
send it
send them-
electronically,
Yes.
and we don't have to.
Yeah.
They could even send it ahead of time and
Yeah.
say, if you refer to the PowerPoint that I sent you yesterday and it's titled this, and so, maybe, anyway. I just didn't think that was a real wise move.
Terrific.
You're not saying not to use the screen, you're saying have the electronic
No, I'm
information
just saying I
sent.
don't
The thumb
things
drive
at a
thing.
time,
I don't
right?
think that I don't know, because I don't think that they should have to deal with it. I think if somebody has a PowerPoint presentation that they want to present, they can submit it via electronic and be done with it, and then refer to it, because then honestly, in 3 minutes,
Okay.
you don't have time to refer to a PowerPoint presentation. You got 3 minutes, get your words out and be done and go away.
And I,
That's-
and
you know.
I actually, I hadn't even thought about the potential for really bad things showing up in
Yeah, that's
3D.
hilarious.
And that, if you've only got 3 minutes, I think is the right. And so people can still submit their stuff electronically, but one of the people who came to testify said he wanted a document reader and a power plan thing that he could
Blast it out.
show, and I just lack imagination in thinking about all the bad things that could
Well,
happen.
I kind of went in the reference of 64 thinking the effigies that would have gotten put up there for that it was disturbing and I just decided I did not
But-
want to go there.
I agree with you there, but the screen, sometimes a visual can make 5 minutes worth
People
of
often do
speaking.
hand out visuals, and sometimes they hand them out in advance of their talk or after their talk.
If they could use the screen, I think sometimes a visual,
I think
if
it's.
one PowerPoint slide can give you almost a minute's worth of information.
So,
There is,
how do you think
I
we
don't
should
know. I don't
handle
know how
it?
you screen it though. I agree. You don't want people just walking up and sticking their thumb drives in there. You really
And
don't.
I think asking
But-
these guys to try and do it is one more thing that's on their plate, that they've got so much on their plate.
I
that-
agree.
really-
But we're also limiting, some people are auditory, some people are visual. Some of the assembly members may react better to visual.
So if you submit it in electronic document form to the assembly, A, they can see it. And B, if we get things up and running like we're talking about doing, that people can actually see,
Okay.
people being the public can see the presented and already public testimony that has been put into writing,
Okay.
then they can see it too. So that
Okay.
that eliminates your need for a visual
Okay.
in the room
Okay.
kind of thing. People scare me.
No, I agree with you there. I absolutely agree with you there. But I'm a visual learner. I like visuals. I
Yeah.
like to see something up
Well,
there.
and I do too, but I just don't trust people.
Well, and
I agree.
A lot of folks do also have handouts, and you'll stack them in or you'll just pass them out.
Yeah.
So that you can have access, but it'd be paper.
Then you're killing trees.
Killing
again,
forests,
you know?
yeah.
You've got all
Okay.
this technology, you're
So-
not using it.
Those are my opinions, and for
Thank you.
whatever they are worth or not
If a
worth.
person wanted to submit written stuff with their testimony, and they often do, can they just hand it to the clerk in the front, and then
Yes.
you will disseminate it?
How many
So they don't
copies
go
do you
one at a
require?
time and take up 10 minutes
Time.
distributing it?
Huh? How many copies do you require?
We require 12, one for each member and one for the clerk for the permanent file.
Okay,
Of paper copies of stuff you're talking about. But if you go to this electronic
I think,
system.
yeah, at this juncture, I think
It-
that's a safer route.
Goes to all the email.
And there
all
may be
members' emails, and the
technology in
clerk
2
maintains
years
it
that
with the
make
record.
that all a moot issue that will automatically.
Okay, so now what I want to do
Good work, guys.
is I seek from any of you, okay, what we have now is a combination of the September 11th modified by the 5 points on September 12th.
Yep.
And I know that they are not yet combined, but I seek any additional, delete this paragraph because it's awful, or suggestions you have for completely different ideas. From this September 11th version was a culmination of all the meetings plus public hearings of things that are before us. If the language is wishy-washy, meaning could, should, may, it meant that there were so many different points of view that I didn't make a call on that. So, any suggestions about any paragraphs that you'd like to change in September 11th, modified by September 12th, further modified by Carolyn?
I like number 4. I like the way you did number 4. I just think that the S version,
Yeah.
I like that.
See, it's broad in scope, it generates a lot of comments, I think it's well-written, it reflects what
Yeah.
we've heard and tested. I think it's a great document,
I agree.
and to get out there in the public and among ourselves, and I think it's gonna generate some discussion without polarizing, that's the thing I like, it's broad enough, but yet I don't see anything that is polarizing, and I thought it was a fabulous job, I was very pleased with it.
Okay.
I do, you know, when we never got through this, but I have a bunch of old notes that
Yes.
were never answered, so you want me to punch through them?
Yes, please.
Okay. Number 1, I thought it was a great document, well drafted.
Excuse me, before you let Chip, I
Yes.
have a 4 o'clock, I was able to bump it a half hour, so I'm
Thank
gonna
you
skedaddle.
for
It
coming.
was,
Oh,
no,
okay.
thank you, this is great.
Yeah, I do too. I have to chair at 4 o'clock, so
Okay.
I'll leave it on 5
Thank you,
minutes.
thank you.
I'm gonna be
both.
really, really quick.
One thing I just said for you before you go, I want you to know, I have a draft that's about 3 sentences long right now on my computer, which is an introduction that said, we were appointed, this is what
Good.
we considered, our philosophy is,
Good.
the public hearing process is designed to provide guidance to the Assembly in their consideration. We come to this simply saying, let the people speak. That's the
Fabulous.
That's
gist of it.
good.
Fabulous, yes.
Are you
Thank
gonna
you. I
do a
thought
red
that-
line of this at
I'm
some point?
going to change this. I'm not gonna redline it. What I'm gonna do is actually, because
Revise
this is
it.
a working draft, I'm gonna
Clean it up. and
modify
color it.
this
You're gonna
by
add
this
that
and
from what
this.
year today, and
And it'll be
This
the,
is one that changes.
I'm not gonna do
I have
a,
to split a 6-pack iced tea.
an S1,
It is
S2
essentially
version.
for the LGBT
Bec-
community. And
because I think it'll
the
confuse people, but
Yeah.
maybe I can be persuaded otherwise.
I'll send the
If you
blank
think,
well, no, if you do a new one, I can make my own red line.
okay.
Yeah.
My
See where you
intention
made
was
your
it to,
changes.
for tomorrow,
As
have a
good as
cleaned
we
up
can.
version with this and this modifying that.
You have homework, in
Well,
other words.
that's you. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Well, then we should
I'm
just hear
listening.
Cheryl.
But I want to hear other
Okay.
comments.
Yeah.
To be, the sentence is incomplete at the end of to be.
To be
Persons to be
heard.
Okay. I'm concerned about 2C. I know, I'm very excited to get boards and commissions' agendas published in advance, but I'm pretty sure they'll be very unhappy about that because it takes away their flexibility to deal with their own business. So,
Can I also provide a comment on that?
Yeah.
I'm very
The
excited.
boards and commissions is out of the mayor's office. So
Oh.
something to consider. We are
Cooperating.
presenting this to the assembly.
Yeah.
The mayor is at the assembly meeting, but just understand that it is handled out of the
Okay.
mayor's office.
Okay, you know, it's interesting, but I heard people at the public hearing say, I didn't know until I got there what the Parks and Rec Board was going to take up.
Yes.
And they are appointed by the assembly, so
Yeah,
how does it work?
they're appointed by the mayor
Tomorrow.
and
confirmed by the
Bye,
assembly.
thanks, Bob.
Thank you, thank you. I won't sign you up for any of those groups.
Thank you, I don't.
So they are confirmed by the assembly, but they are appointed by the mayor. And the mayor's office handles the coordination. They have actually a staffer up there who is responsible for the boards and commissions. Susan Bretz? Karen Bretz? Karen Bretz. Something Bretz.
So actually, the assembly doesn't have any authority over them, per se?
Per se.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I think it is good, but I
It's
think
out of
the
our-
body should understand that that might not.
I agree. I think it's
in a
good.
weird. Yeah, I mean,
So we might want to have this category of good but not under the assembly's control.
Okay,
Well, like, yeah, best practice thing where we list some of these things we've talked about that
Yeah.
right.
are kind of off the side, but that something needs to.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Cheryl.
2F, I think it's reasonable now to go ahead and list Facebook. It sounds like it's everywhere, it's everywhere.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of
That'd be good,
weird, but
actually,
I,
really good.
whatever.
Maybe we say Facebook and social media because we don't even know what the
Yeah.
next version's gonna be.
Good
Yeah,
point.
there you go.
Yeah,
We've
good
talked
point.
about
Be
a lot
flexible.
of like YouTube channel would be fun to have,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it would be kind of fun.
Oh, wow.
What do you think about that?
and Instagram, but we'll work on it.
Okay,
gotta hire
I'm
a new
on
person in the
page
office.
3. Okay.
Item what?
Well, some of these, I haven't looked at them for a while, they're gone, because they've been taken care of. Oh, the may continue, I caught that piece.
I'm sorry, just tell me the name of the
5A,
number.
5A, the list
Yeah,
of
but she's gonna
people,
rewrite that.
correct. The list of people, oh shoot, well, I don't understand my comment. I have the word if anticipate. If anticipate, I have no idea what that means now.
Well, as we were talking about.
This is because the assembly's supposed to take a look at the agenda
Yeah.
and know
Oh,
what's
that's
gonna
right.
be a Lollapalooza versus what's not.
Yeah, and sometimes they seem to be shocked, but the public record will be open. Okay, so all that's great on page, and I'm on number 6, received by, through the clerk. I have just a tiny comment. 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth line on 6A, received by assembly members through the clerk. Because I think it's reasonable that the assembly members can have private conversations, what do you think? With constituents about ordinances.
They can.
Okay,
Sure.
well, the way this sentence, in my opinion, read, it was that anything they received had to go on public. That's
I think
what it
this
reads
is
today.
for the.
I think that's for public testimony.
I think this is for items that we were considering written public testimony, but
Okay, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
did you hear me?
No,
I
I
mean,
did.
that's all, just a clarification.
Actually,
That would be at the discretion of an assembly member if he had.
To share or not.
To share or not from, yeah.
Okay, next.
So that, each submittal must be an address of the submitter, no anonymous submittals. I had a question about that, but I'm not
I'm
gonna.
sorry,
I had a question about whether,
what number?
number 6A, next to last line, each submittal must be identified by name and address
Yeah.
of the submitter. No anonymous submittals will be considered. I think that no anonymous is fine, but identified by name and address,
Oh, but how about by name?
I think name is great.
Well, I think name and location or something, but you're
Yeah,
submitting
but
it
you're gonna take out
electronically.
address.
I'm
And
looking to take out address.
Okay.
I mean,
I think that
I mine
those-
those things, I'll be frank with you. I go in and look for those addresses and I mine them, and I know other people do too.
yeah.
Really?
And I
Oh,
think that
Yeah,
Mine them, you mean you use them for other purposes?
yeah, use them for other
Oh,
purposes.
yeah.
You care about this issue? Let me put you on my list.
Okay.
Well, interesting.
But you don't want, if you saw the editorial by the ADN editor, you don't want anonymous because it gets vitriolic.
Correct.
so. I think they're
Yeah.
saying name, and I think that this is
A real name, not,
yeah, and I
Or
think
Donald Duck.
that this is something that
Newsbar.
logistically,
Downstairs.
when we look into a program that does this, we'll need to find something. But I think we just want to present to the body that name but it seems like you would need some sort of identifier to log into the system. But
And most
that
people
wouldn't
don't
be
care, and
posted.
they will,
Right.
they'll often post their address, their email, whatever, and that's fine, let them do it. But I'm saying you should accept a comment with a name only.
Certainly.
Or-
Okay.
Yeah,
That's where I'm
or
headed.
the login maybe requires the address, but the comment's posted with just the name.
Right, you've got to
Okay.
join.
There's
Yeah,
some sort
right.
of
We're talking about,
identifier.
we're talking about having to have a municipal account to post your public
Right, yeah.
testimony. So you sign up for your municipal account, you get your password, you get your, your login, and when you make
Yeah, I
that
think-
municipal account, that's where your address or your identifier comes in to say, yes, this is who you are. To prove that that's who you are, because you're getting something in writing, you're not getting to see a face. And because you're only getting to see this, there needs to be more than just a name.
I'm kinda iffy with that.
I'm not,
I
because
don't-
then what's
this is-
published isn't your name and address, it's whatever your login name is.
Are you Julia? Hi, I'm Jane Anvick.
I
Nice
know,
to meet you.
and so I knew that this was scheduled on, I just wanted to invite you to stop by.
Thank you
which I've
so
done,
much.
and we'll take it to you.
Thank you.
That was all I had.
My only request is, I know I spoke about it last time, but maybe tomorrow when we're voting on some of the things, I would like to be able to possibly recuse myself from
From
number 8.
I know.
Yeah.
I understand. And number 8 has to do with the assembly presence at public hearings, and
Yeah.
she works for them, so she doesn't want to be in a position of voting to say that.
I completely
I
respect that.
completely understand that, and I get it.
Can we, if we're gonna have a separate, this is kind of out of our area, but these are best practices, we could put that there too instead, because it's not.
Boy, I think the public would like to see it up
You
front.
know,
Okay, that's,
My opinion is the
I don't blame you for wanting to recuse yourself.
The number of people who said it's rude for them to leave in the middle of my testimony, they need to know people think that. Then maybe, I mean, honest to God, maybe they don't know that. Maybe assembly
It's
members
possible.
don't know
How
that
badly
somebody
it's
regards
received.
that as rude, or
They've been out of it so long, they've
or that they
forgotten.
come and then they come for the public hearing and they leave for a half hour.
That's, yeah, lots.
They just need to know people don't
Yeah.
like
No, I
it.
agree with you. I agree they need to know. I just was thinking maybe if we're gonna have a separate,
Well, this way it's up in them.
Okay.
Up front.
Okay.
But,
Make it to be
and,
upfront, that's great.
and I'm open for conversation about it, but I'm willing to accept the irritation of the assembly
Okay.
to be on the side of the people who regard that behavior as unseemly.
so we'll put it up front.
I'll stand with Jane on that one,
All right.
no problem.
And besides,
Here's one more idea. I'm gonna offer you this again, to see if any of that language in this model ordinance for public participation might fit into your first paragraph. It may or may not. And I'm not gonna ask you to include any of those words, but I'm gonna offer it to you.
this is from the Deliberative Democracy Consortium in America.
It's just got all the buzzwords for,
Good words, collaboration, efficiently, effectively deliver public services.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments, considerations?
I have to thank you for the way you've managed this process.
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna be, and it's been very effective.
Very good, yes.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so just procedurally, so you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the September 11th draft, modify it, meaning change it so it reflects the consensus that was achieved at the September 12th meeting, and I'm going to modify it with Carolyn's recommendations so that you're going to get a new piece of paper tomorrow that'll say, this is a consideration of those processes, and where we do not have consensus about a topic or a language or a verb, procedurally what we will do tomorrow is vote on it so that everybody who has concern has had the ability to be able to articulate it. And this draft will then go forward to the public for the public hearing on October 1st.
Now, if you remember, we were allowed to do minority reports, so do you want to think about that in advance of tomorrow? Yeah.
Uh,
So,
I-
I thought that was in part of the
It
ordinance.
is part of the ordinance. It's part of the
rather-
resolution that created this thing.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't want any minority reports,
agree.
only because I think we've got enough trouble as it is telling them what we think. And I don't want to give them an out of saying, oh, but there was chaos in the house. I'm speaking.
I agree.
I think in general, I mean, I gotta say, as far as working with the task force from a wide range and variety of folk, I think we've been pretty, for the most part, in agreement on, I'd say
Amazingly.
95 to 98% of everything.
Yeah.
You know, except for, maybe, insane groups or whatever that was.
Or the control of who gets to speak.
Yeah,
but basically
in
we were.
general, I
in
think
agreement.
we're pretty there, so I'm not concerned about,
Well, I just think
Yeah.
it's in the ordinance, I just wanted to
yeah,
put it on the
Thank you.
table.
good,
Any other concerns,
thank you.
Good job.
questions, comments?
Thanks for your midnight drafting.
All right, so
Will
tomorrow.
you be up
you'll-
tonight?
Tonight you'll have a new draft in your e-boxes and.
About 3 a.m.
No, I don't think I can do 3 a.m. tonight.
Okay.
I was up too late last night, but anyway, thank you all.
Thank you.
So then do we put this out on the web so that people see it before they?
Yes.
Yeah, Amanda
Okay,
here.
but
Okay,
here's,
good.
I want to talk to Amanda about,
Should I-
I want the public hearing document widely distributed. I want the press to know every version of it. I intend to actually write a compass piece inviting people
Great.
to come and participate
Good work.
and articulating that we've been doing this so that they know it's happening and that it's a draft and it's wide open and hey y'all, if you can't come to the meeting on the 1st, send us an email and we'll take it into consideration. This is the first bite of the apple on these words, and what do you think? There are probably too many words for most people to read, but so I'm a little concerned about its length.
Well, you know how to come.
Anyway,
We think we can trust you
No, I
with
think
that.
she was
But-
talking about all the.
but
all
I'm,
the-
Yeah, but
my
she can-
hope is that people go, oh, okay, well, I'll take a look and see what I think.
And I think that the first meeting did a really good job. I mean, we got the word out before the meeting, but then there was a lot of press at the meeting and afterwards, so.
I thought it was a fairly good turnout for an esoteric topic.
Yeah, I did too, and like I've heard from other folks and somebody else mentioned it here, when you have the names that you have sitting on this committee, people actually feel like something's gonna happen. It's not some fly-by-night,
A harebrained group.
Thank you. You said it.
Amanda, I have just a silly request, but could you take the word volunteer off references to my name on this committee? I don't know where that came from.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I'm
Because
just-
I don't want people to think that this is your paid job. We are,
We're all volunteers.
But I'm the only one who's listed as a volunteer.
Oh,
Remove
I
volunteer.
apologize.
And that's okay. I mean, it just happened. I don't, but anyway, if you could, and it'll still last. It'll be a repeat, but if you could please default, if I could spell volunteer, we could be doing
I
that.
apologize. That
Oh, no
was my
problem.
fault. What I didn't want,
It's not a big deal. I just thought I keep seeing it coming back at me.
my intention was that people know, people are simply volunteering their time to work on this,
Yeah.
that nobody's on the payroll to do this, except Amanda, who gets to do it
in conjunction with
in
everything else.
conjunction with everything else, but you have a full vote.